Most animals get born somewhere reasonable: a nest, a burrow, a patch of water. You get born inside a stomach. A real, working stomach, the kind of place whose entire job in life is to dissolve things into mush. And not just any stomach, your own mother's. Welcome to life as a gastric-brooding frog, a creature so bizarre that nature seemingly built it on a dare, and then quietly erased it from the planet. But let's not spoil the ending. Let's start at the beginning, in a cool, damp rainforest stream tucked away in the mountains of Australia. On the surface, you're nothing special to look at. You're a smallish frog, brownish and slick, the kind of thing you'd walk right past without a second glance. You hang around clear, rocky creeks, catching bugs, staying wet, doing normal froggy stuff. If a scientist scooped you up, they'd think, yep, that's a frog. Nothing to see here. You're the kind of frog that blends right into the background, the sort nobody writes home about. And that's the cruel joke of your whole existence, because hidden inside this plain little frog is one of the most jaw-dropping reproductive tricks the natural world has ever produced. You don't look like a marvel. You look like lunch for a bird. But what your body can do would make a science fiction writer blush. And then your mom does the single weirdest thing in the entire animal kingdom. Most frogs lay their eggs in the water and call it a day. The eggs hatch into tadpoles, the tadpoles fend for themselves, and that's the whole deal. But not your family. When your mother's eggs get fertilized, she doesn't tuck them under a leaf or guard them in a pond. She swallows them. She gulps her own babies down her throat and into her stomach, the exact organ that exists to break food into soup. Her belly, the place where every bug she ever ate got melted down into nothing, is about to become a nursery. And you're the one moving in. So now you're an egg sitting in a pit of acid that is specifically designed to digest you alive. Think about that. You have just been dropped into the most dangerous room in your mother's entire body, the one place built from the ground up to destroy living tissue. By all rights, you should be dinner. So how do you survive? You cheat. You run a chemical hack on your own mom. You and your siblings are coated in a special substance, and that substance does something incredible. It shuts down her stomach acid. It tells her body, hey, stop making the acid, stop the churning, stop the digestion, the kitchen is closed. It's a chemical signal so powerful it overrides one of the most basic functions in your mother's entire body. Her gut has spent her whole life melting down everything that goes into it, and your little coating just strolls in and flips the off switch. For the next several weeks, the most acidic, destructive room in her body goes completely calm. Also, a batch of frogs can move in rent-free. And amazingly, it works. Her stomach quits doing the one thing a stomach is supposed to do. The acid switches off. The whole organ basically gets reprogrammed from a food processor into a womb. You have chemically disabled your mother's digestive system from the inside, purely so she doesn't accidentally eat you. That is your very first act in life. Not breathing, not swimming, sabotaging your own mom's guts so you don't get melted. But here's the thing. While you've made yourself safe, you've also turned your mother into a prisoner of her own pregnancy. Because her stomach can't make acid anymore, she can't digest food, which means she can't eat at all. 4 weeks. While you and your siblings grow inside her, she's running on empty, slowly starving, living off nothing but her own reserves. And it gets worse. As you grow, you take up more and more room. You and all your siblings keep swelling up inside her belly until her stomach is grotesquely stretched, packed wall to wall with developing frogs. There can be dozens of you crammed in there. Imagine your own belly stuffed so full it can't hold a single thing more, except instead of food, it's packed wall to wall with your own growing children, each one demanding space you simply do not have. And all that swelling has to go somewhere. So her stomach balloons up and starts crushing her other organs, pressing especially hard against her lungs. Her lungs get squished so badly she can barely use them to breathe. She has to start breathing partly through her skin just to get enough oxygen, because you've taken over her insides so completely there's hardly any room left to inflate her lungs. So picture her now, starving, swollen, barely able to breathe, a living, gasping incubator, slowly being hollowed out from the inside by her own kids. She can't hunt, she can barely move, she just sits there, swollen and gasping, pouring every last scrap of her own body into keeping you alive and asking for nothing back. It is one of the most extreme acts of motherhood on the entire planet, and she does it without ever getting a say in the matter. That's the deal she signs up for to bring you into the world. Meanwhile, in there, you've got it pretty good, by your standards. You hatch from your egg inside the stomach and develop as a tadpole in total darkness, floating in the quiet, acid-free chamber your mom is sacrificing her whole body to keep running. You don't even need to eat, because you're living off the yolk you were born with. You just float, and grow, and turn slowly from a tadpole into a tiny, fully formed frog, all inside the belly of your starving mother. And then, after about 6 or 7 weeks of this, it's time to be born. And the way you get born is exactly as gross as the rest of it. Your mom doesn't lay you. She doesn't push you out any normal way. She throws you up. When you and your siblings are ready, she opens her mouth and vomits you out into the world. Sometimes it's a gentle, one-at-a-time ooze. Sometimes, if she gets startled, it's a full-on projectile launch, blasting a whole batch of baby frogs out of her mouth in one violent heave. That's your grand entrance to life. Not hatching in the sun. Not crawling out of a pond. Getting puked across a rock by your own exhausted mother. You spend your earliest days as a creature that lives inside a stomach, and you make your debut by being regurgitated. Happy birthday. So let's recap where you're at. You were conceived, swallowed, and grown inside a digestive organ. You survived by chemically shutting down your mom's ability to eat. You starved her, crushed her lungs, and turned her body into a gasping, hollowed-out incubator for weeks. And then you were vomited into existence. By any measure, you are one of the strangest, most upsetting little animals that nature has ever cooked up. And you'd think that being this unique, this one of a kind, would make you a survivor. A miracle. Something the world would protect. Nope. Here comes the cruelest twist of all. Your kind was only discovered by science in the 1970s. For the entire history of humanity, nobody even knew you existed, this impossible frog that grows its babies in its stomach. Researchers were stunned. They thought you might be a medical goldmine, because if they could figure out how you switch off stomach acid, it might help treat stomach ulcers in humans. That alone could have helped millions of people whose own stomach acid eats away at their insides. You weren't just a weird frog. You were potentially a key to fixing one of the most common problems in human medicine, hopping around on 4 little legs in an Australian creek, completely clueless about how valuable you were. You were a living scientific treasure, a creature that rewrote the rules of biology. And then, almost the instant the world found out about you, you vanished. Within just a handful of years of being discovered, your species disappeared. Gone. One type of gastric-brooding frog was found, studied for a few short years, and then never seen alive again. A second kind was discovered a little later, and it blinked out almost immediately too. The likely culprit was a devastating fungus sweeping through the world's amphibians, along with the usual mix of habitat damage and bad luck. Whatever it was, it worked fast. You went from a brand new scientific marvel to completely extinct in about a decade. You barely got noticed before you were wiped off the earth entirely. And it doesn't even end there. Years later, scientists felt so haunted by losing you that they tried to literally bring you back from the dead. They took preserved cells from your kind and tried to clone you, to resurrect a creature that no longer exists. They actually managed to get early embryos to start growing. And then those embryos died, every single time, before they could become anything. And think about how rare that even is. Most extinct animals just fade quietly into history and stay there. But you were so strange, so valuable, so impossible, that people flat out refused to let you stay dead, and the universe still looked at them and said no. So now you're not just extinct. You're the species that humanity keeps trying to revive and keeps failing to, a ghost frog flickering for a moment in a lab dish before dying all over again. So let's go all the way back to the start. You get born inside a stomach. And now you know just how much weirdness and tragedy is packed into that one sentence. You begin your life inside the one organ designed to dissolve you, surviving only by chemically sabotaging your own mother. You spend weeks growing in the dark while she starves, suffocates, and gets hollowed out to keep you alive. You enter the world by being thrown up out of her mouth. And the reward for being one of the most astonishing creatures evolution ever produced is to be discovered, marveled at, and then erased from existence within a few short years, while scientists are still scrambling to understand you. That's what it means to be born a gastric-brooding frog. Your nursery was a stomach, your survival trick was shutting down your mother's guts, your birth was a mouthful of vomit, and your entire species snuffed out almost the moment the world learned your name. You're not just an animal anymore. You're a what-if, a ghost, a marvel that nature built and then deleted. Be glad you weren't born as one.